Hello, everybody. My name is Sharina, editor for Medical Channel Asia, and today we will be joined by Dr. Francesca Sumilang Sy-Alvarado, dermatologist and owner and co-founder of Quad Clinic Philippines. Hi, Dr. Chaska. Thank you for being with us today.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Chaska. So, today we're going to talk about something very specific. I've been into skincare for quite some time, but it gets really frustrating when something doesn't work for you, especially when it's trending online and you see everyone hopping into the trend and it works for them, but suddenly it doesn't work for you. And one of my frustration is seeing all of the Western products work on Western skin, and then when I try it, it's just a fail. So my first question would be, what are the most common skin concerns people residing in tropical countries like us here in the Philippines face?
All right, that's a really good question and a really good insights, Sharina, actually specifically to our weather. So the Philippines, as you know, we're closer to the equator. So we have basically two seasons, just wet and dry season. So during the dry season, that summer, we're usually more prone to getting eczema or fungal infections, anything that's exacerbated by heat. And not only that, we're also more prone to pigmentary disorders, for example, melasma, because we get a lot more UV compared to the temperate countries. So we're also very prone to getting hyperpigmentation, especially on sun-exposed areas. Another thing actually that we tend to downplay is our risk for skin cancer, because a lot of people might say that, okay, so we are in the Philippines and we are tan, so we're not really prone to skin cancer. But I honestly believe it's largely undiagnosed, and people tend to take for granted sun protection, therefore increasing our risk for skin cancer. Aside from that, well, other things that can be exacerbated by heat and the sun can be yeast infections. If you're familiar with an, they would call it an, no? So it's actually called pityriasis versicolor. Whenever you sweat under occlusion and with the extra humidity, you're also prone to developing overgrowths of natural yeast in the skin. So basically, everybody has this kind of yeast, but when it overgrows, it actually produces skin lesions, patches that can be either white, pink, or even brown. Well, for the wet season naman, no, we're also prone to developing, depending on how bad the rainy season is. For example, if we get exposed to flood water, we're prone to bacterial infections, or anything actually that can damage our skin barrier through immersion in flood water can go into the skin. So even fungal infections, bacterial infections, viral infections. And if there's a lot of pollution, particularly if you live near industrial sites or factories, you can also develop contact dermatitis or skin reactions to environmental pollutants. So actually a lot of things. So not just the usual acne and eczema. And actually during extremes of temperature, if it's either too humid or when the air becomes less humid naman, so we call that extremes of temperature, we can also have exacerbations or worsening of chronic skin conditions, for example, eczema. So these extremes of temperature can trigger our eczema. So a lot of things.
I see, Dr. Chaska. I've learned a lot just from that answer. And recently, we've been experiencing heat waves here in the Philippines and in other tropical countries in the region. So I wanted to ask, how do the high temperature and humidity levels in tropical regions impact the way people should care for their skin?
Right. So it has a lot to do with thermoregulation, the way our body is actually programmed through the skin largely, to be able to adjust to the temperature of the environment. However, because of high humidity and a lot of water loss in the skin, we can actually get dehydrated skin. That's really ironic, no? So it's heat, it's hot, but we can actually have more water loss through the skin. That's why you also have to have moisturizers that hydrate the skin. At the same time, a lot of people during the summer are also complaining of oiliness because of the excessive production of oil. So that can also impact the way we use our skincare products, what kind of targeted skincare products that we use, and such. There can also be sweating disorders, actually, especially if you sweat too much, because sweat, when it's occluded, no, from clothing, for example, too tight clothing, or when you work out but you don't get to shower, so you can also damage the skin barrier through irritation because of that sweat, or even the rubbing of those clothes. So you also have to consider these factors. Also, drinking lots of water may not directly impact the skin, but can help with the way that our body regulates temperature.
That's great to know, Dr. Chaska, because I feel sometimes hopeless, especially with the heat in our country nowadays. Skincare may be frustrating every now and then. So, talking about skincare and everything that we're doing here to make our skin, or especially our faces, look as bright and as fresh looking as possible, even in the midst of heat. What are the common skincare mistakes that we are doing?
I think I was able to mention one earlier. We often forget to prioritize sun protection. So we have to wear sunscreen. We have to protect our skin from the rays of the sun. I know it's very tempting to bask in the sunlight or the sun's rays, but actually, because like some people like their tan, and I actually like the color of our skin as Filipinos too. But excessive tanning or tanning in general is actually your body's way of screaming for help, because it's like it's a sign of damage, no? So well, it's not very well recognized, but definitely you will know that you can get tanning after a sunburn. So and sunburns can also be quite debilitating. If you've noticed, you've ever gone on an outdoor trip, no, and then getting a sunburn is like really bad. It affects your productivity, and actually feels very uncomfortable. Another mistake I would say would be over-exfoliation. So people have a tendency to use many products that have different exfoliants. For example, already having an exfoliative cleanser, so either the AHAs or BHA cleanser, and then having a toner, or actually scrubbing some more, or using physical exfoliants like loofahs, scrubs, and doing that too often. So that actually strips our skin barrier of its natural oils. So that makes us less protected and more prone to getting infections and actually irritation from the environment. So it's also a common skincare mistake.
Wow, I didn't even know that. So that's a new thing for me. So it's advisable not to combine AHA face wash if you already, or AHA toner if you already have an AHA face wash, because it's over exfoliating.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it depends on the concentration as well, and it also depends on what kind of ingredients these products have. So for me, if you can limit your exfoliation to 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the kind of exfoliant, and at the same time also take care of your skin barrier, because aside from using all these exfoliating products, people also tend to use a lot of lighteners. So imagine trying to exfoliate a lot and then using whitening products or lightening products, and then not making sure that you're moisturizing, you're being sun protected. So that's very damaging to the skin barrier. So actually, if you have any doubts on your skincare regimen, it's best to, number one, stick to the basics, stick with mild products, a mild cleanser, mild moisturizer, and sunscreen. Number two, if you have particular concerns, for example, pigmentation, it's still best to consult a board certified dermatologist for that.
Thank you for the advice, Dr. Chaska. So, you touched base already on what hydration plays or drinking water plays in maintaining a healthy skin. But I also want to go to how does the diet impact a healthy skin in tropical climate?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. And it's not just limited to tropical climates. No. I would say like in general, diet impacts our overall skin health because, for example, I tell my acne patients, there have been studies on high glycemic index food and dairy. So when we say high glycemic index food, these are the kinds of food that when you eat them, immediately your blood sugar would spike up. And these blood sugar spikes can actually trigger oiliness and therefore lead to acne breakouts. So, what are these high glycemic index food? Usually the processed ones, the processed sweet foods. So, I would advise, for example, for these patients who are sensitive to these effects of certain food to go on a more low glycemic index food. Doesn't have to be like a no rice diet or no milk diet, but more of like to stick to less processed forms. So, for example, you were eating white rice, maybe shift to brown rice, or if you tend to put a lot of sugar in your coffee or your drinks, you want to keep everything in moderation or shift to the like less processed also like brown sugar or sometimes even stevia, these things. But it's not a one size fits all. I mean, not everyone, for example, who drinks milk tea or eats a chocolate cake will break out. So it also depends on your predisposition. But definitely healthy lifestyle like diet and exercise. With regard to diet, I would recommend eating more fruits and vegetables because these are actually sources of antioxidants. And actually, as we grow older towards our 20s onwards, we actually tend to lose our inherent, no, so our inherent antioxidant systems in the body. We actually have our own ways of producing antioxidants to combat the effects of stress. However, these eventually deteriorate, and we might need to have external sources of antioxidants. Of course, this is not to promote any antioxidant supplement in particular, but actually we get more of it from our diet. It's still the best way to incorporate antioxidants in our regimen.
I see, Dr. Chaska. And my next question would be, what are some key ingredients or products that are especially beneficial for skins in tropical climates?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I will always start with sunscreen. You know me na. I'm such an advocate of sunscreen and yes, sun protection. So in terms of product or ingredients, sunscreen is a must have if you have space for just one product in your skincare routine. Aside from cleanser, I would say sunscreen. And other ingredients, it depends, of course, on the condition. And there are actually some ingredients that have more superior results or can work faster or can be more effective than others, but can will have to be prescribed by a board certified dermatologist. So, for example, in general, if you have, I'll probably go with the over the counter products or ingredients, I guess. So, for example, if you're into combating hyperpigmentation, aside from sunscreen, you can look into niacinamide, products with azelaic acid, kojic acid, depending on the formulation, arbutin. But if you're into trying to prevent or treat mild to moderate acne, you can look into benzoyl peroxide, salicylic acid, but like I said, not overusing it. Especially during the hot seasons, I would discourage against exfoliating too much because the UV index is really high. And when you exfoliate a lot, you're exposing more of your skin to the sun's rays. So, yeah. And then for moisturizers, I would definitely go for one that is compatible with our climate. I know there are a lot of very tempting products out there in the market, especially there's a hype about products that are from other countries, but they may not necessarily be compatible with our climate. Or, for example, some people are into the 10-step Korean routines, but these are not very compatible with our climate as well because it involves a lot of layering and moisturizers, which may be a bit redundant and not cosmetically acceptable for our audience or for our consumers as Filipinos.
Thank you, Dr. Chaska. And you mentioned also about hypes in skincare. So I wanted to ask, what are trending skincare products online that we should not be using if we're residing in a tropical country? For example, I think one of the biggest hypes is the retinol,
Yeah.
using retinol. So I was curious if this is something advisable to be used even if we live in a tropical country.
Yes, there's actually that's a very good point you're trying to raise. Retinol, it's a vitamin A derivative. It's an over-the-counter kind of a vitamin A derivative. There's actually no issue with using retinol in a tropical country as long as you are guided, or if that you have good supportive skincare, you're using mild cleansers, you're using moisturizer with it, and definitely using sunscreen. um, Sometimes overzealous, it's usually the overzealous use of such products, not limited to retinol, sorry, but also exfoliants, like I said earlier. um, that would be something I would advise against. What I would advise against as well would be the use of non-FDA approved products, or products that have FDA warnings against. So we also have to be vigilant. Um, I know it's like skincare is really big nowadays, and there are so many brands popping up. We don't necessarily know, or we can't readily discern which ones are reliable or from reputable manufacturers. But it actually helps to put in more research and be more aware of products that have the necessary qualifications, or actually even with sunscreen, they must have the necessary testing. No, so it's very, very difficult to formulate a sunscreen, and I'm not very sure how it's possible that we have different kinds of sunscreen that may not be as well regulated here in the Philippines, unlike in other countries.
Thank you, Dr. Chaska. And of course, I would have to ask, what is your skincare routine, Dr. Chaska?
Well, I'm actually very conservative with regard to my skincare routine. So I always believe in staying with the basics: mild cleanser, a mild moisturizer, and sunscreen. And then, of course, I have targeted concerns, for example, like pigmentation, and I use a serum that has vitamin C and niacinamide. And then sometimes I'm fickle and I would shift to a serum that has brightening peptides. So, of course, whatever I have in my routine may not necessarily be applicable to everyone. So, I would still suggest that they seek the opinion or the help of a board certified dermatologist to to establish their own skin routine. But you know, if I know that not everybody can have immediate access to a board certified dermatologist, so for me, I would still recommend just the basics: mild cleanser, mild moisturizer, and sunscreen, and that's a good way to start.
Thank you, Dr. Chaska. And my final question would be, I know your first tip, which is the make sure that you put on sunscreen. So I'm just gonna ask for four more tips, skincare tips from you.
Sure. Okay, number one is before you start with anything, start with a basic skincare routine because you can never go wrong with the basics. Number two, you want to know your concerns and be aware of your skin concerns because that's how you can start. It can be daunting and overwhelming with all the ingredients and products out there. So for me, you have to know first, you have to set your goal first before you look into what ingredients would work for that particular concern of yours. All right. Another one is I'm actually into smart skincare in the way of choosing multi-ingredient products. So, for example, sometimes some people can do like single ingredient products, but they have a lot of ingredients in their routine. It doesn't have to be a 10-step routine. If you are able to find good products that already address your concerns and you're actually hiyang. So Filipinos would have this term called hiyang, that you're actually hiyang too. I would say stick with that. Less is more, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be boring. So skincare can be fun, just do it smart. And lastly, number four is, well, I'm speaking from the perspective of a dermatologist, and I'm also a dermatologic and laser surgeon. So I also want to tell you to level your expectations with skincare. So skincare, it's a good practice. It's actually a form of self-care. However, there are some concerns, especially towards past our 30s and 40s, like wrinkles or laxity of the skin that cannot be addressed by skincare alone. So that is the best time to see your board certified dermatologist so they can be more targeted. Because what I don't like about some skincare products, at least, is the kind of marketing that they push that erases 10 years from your age, etc. But that's not very truthful. So if ever you have a particular concern, it's still best to consult with your board certified dermatologist.
Thank you, Dr. Chaska. I think this was such a refreshing interview, especially for us living in a tropical country like the Philippines. Like you said, it's not a one size fit all. Not every skincare product that we see online is applicable for us with our weather conditions. And I think I've learned a lot, especially to make sure that we do not self-medicate, especially if we are not sure about what it is, especially if we have skin concerns like you mentioned that could not be treated by our usual skincare products. We have to meet with our board certified dermatologist. So thank you so much, Dr. Chaska, for your time and for your effort. This has been lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharina.